What's good? What's good? It's the one and only, but what do I know? Boxing coming back at y'all with another one, man. So we got Keyshawn. We got Keyshawn Davis in the news. All right. Keyshawn says he want Lamont Roach. All right. Now, I ain't mad at that at all. A lot of people gonna say, "Oh, here he goes again, clout chasing Tank." But I'm gonna get into the article. Before I even get into the article, let me go ahead and just debunk that BS right now. First and foremost, if you know the history of boxing, that's what all fighters do when they call out a fighter. If a fighter, like, they often fight somebody that when they're calling out a fighter that's not really, or that's showing little or no interest in fighting them, what they do is they'll fight a fighter that they face to use that fighter as a measuring stick, or to try to look better, to do either just as much or better than what the fighter that they've been calling out did, right? So I know that kind of sound confusing. So let me go ahead and use some boxers as an example. When they were bringing up Manny Pacquiao, right? Now, Manny Pacquiao was pretty much manufactured to be the guy that's supposed to be Floyd. So what did they do? They had him fight guys that Floyd already beaten, and what happens is, because their styles mesh a little bit better, they wanted to either try to up one or do just as good as Floyd, right? And what that does is, for one, that makes the fight that much more exciting with Manny Pacquiao and Floyd. And for two, what that does is that puts the pressure on Floyd Mayweather to have to fight Manny Pacquiao. For example, Manny Pacquiao versus Ricky Hatton, right? Floyd fought Ricky Hatton, beat him in a 10th round TKO. Manny Pacquiao knocked the soul out of Ricky Hatton in 2 rounds. All right. You know, it's just stuff like that. You see fighters do that a lot when they're calling out guys. Triple G would have done it with Canelo, but the problem was nobody was willing to fight Triple G at that time. Nobody was willing to fight Triple G at that time, right? You see David Benavidez did it with Canelo. He called out Canelo. Canelo didn't want to fight him. What did he do? He fought a guy like Caleb Plant. You know, it's just stuff that goes on in the history of boxing, right? So before you guys try to say Keyshawn Davis, and I can think of many more examples with that, but before you guys try to say Keyshawn Davis is clout chasing Tank, no, this is just a tactic in order to get, like, you know, basically either get Tank in the ring or put pressure on Tank to have to fight Keyshawn. It's just what happens, right? So I don't see nothing wrong with that. But besides, Keyshawn, you know, it's more so like this, right? You guys say, and Keyshawn, this is how Keyshawn's thinking. You guys say, I don't deserve a fight with Tank. I've done nothing, right? So this dude, Tank, fought to a draw. If I go in there and beat the brakes off of this dude, then what are y'all gonna say? You know what I'm saying? Because that'll be a common opponent between me and Tank. You can use that as a measuring stick to see how far I am from Tank, if I'm behind, equal to, or even above Tank Davis. All right. So I like to call out. I like to call out a lot. I like what Tank is doing. I mean, I do like what Tank is doing inside the ring, but I like what Keyshawn is doing. And I think this is a great move. Unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't think that Keyshawn will get a fight with Lamont Roach, because Keyshawn is what we call high risk, low reward. Now, Keyshawn can do really good in Newark, right? Not Newark, I said Newark. I didn't mean to say Newark, but in Virginia, where he's from, Norfolk, Virginia, where he's from, Keyshawn could do great attendance numbers, right? But Keyshawn is just now getting himself, like, really on the scene. So it's no biggie, no rush or nothing like that. It is what it is. Keyshawn gonna get himself out there. He has plenty of time, but he has to get himself in order to get the fight with Tank, in order for Tank to quote unquote acknowledge him. And even if he does, he still might not get his chance. But he has to get himself out there. As far as his name goes, as far as the money, the value to him goes. Otherwise, they're gonna hide behind the excuse of, you bring nothing to the table. Now, I don't understand how you could say that, knowing that, you know, you just did. And Tank Davis, you know, Tank Davis is the star, whether you want to admit it or not. Tank Davis is the star. I don't have no problem admitting that. Tank's my favorite fighter at 135. However, you know, y'all know my saying, I'm always keeping 100 with all fighters, unlike some of these YouTubers that be lusting over Tank's braids. Anyways, Tank Davis is the star, right? He's the A side. He's the star. Now, Granted, he did good numbers with Lamont Roach. I can't remember what I don't know if it was 300,000. It was in between 250 and 350,000, right? Those are really good numbers, and he did that with Lamont Roach. So it's no doubt in my mind that Tank Davis is, and granted, and no matter where he goes, Tank is gonna sell out, bro. Like him and Rolly, him and who was it? Who did he fight before? Wasn't obviously not Keyshawn. It wasn't him and Rolly did great numbers, but it was somebody that he fought that nobody expected. Cause him and Frank Martin did great numbers too. I can't think of who it was, man. Was it Hector Garcia? I think it was Hector Garcia. I think it was Hector Garcia, but they did like really good attendance. Like, dude did like 18,000 people. Like, Tank Davis is gonna always bring the money, right? But just imagine how much if him and Lamont Roach did 250 to 350. Imagine how much him and Keyshawn would do. And they're from around the same area, so you know people gonna come up to show out. Like, they're from around the same area, bro. So it's not like, bro, you know where the fight will have to be at. The fight will have to be on the East Coast somewhere, bro. Did you make that it would do good numbers pay-per-view wise, and it would do good numbers like, you know, ticket selling, like attendance wise. So it's like, bro, to me, it makes sense to make the fight, and it's a unification bout. So you have both fighters have a championship on the line. To me, it makes perfect sense to make that fight. Now, you got to convince Tank Davis to do that because Keyshawn is on board. But anyways, let me go ahead and get into the article. All right, so shout out to Boxing News 24. It says, real-ish, Keyshawn Davis declares Lamont Roach his top target at 135. If Roach secures, I just did a video on Shakur, that's why I'm saying, secures his victory over Tank Davis in a rematch, all right? So it says, Keyshawn Davis says he'd like to fight Lamont Roach if he is victorious in his rematch with Gervonta Davis. Those two are expected to fight in a rematch this summer on June 21st to clear up the controversy from their 12-round draw. Keyshawn's target, WBO lightweight champion Keyshawn, who is 13-0 with 9 knockouts, states that Roach, 25-1 with 10 knockouts, is the only fight. Is the only fight that Lamont Roach would have at 135 division if he defeats Tank. So I guess they meant to say that was an error on their half. I guess they meant to say he states that Roach is the only fight that he would want at 135 if he defeats Tank. However, Roach would have a lot more options available to him than fighting a giant lightweight like Keyshawn. Roach's options are Shakur Stevenson, which is likely. That's a big fight, right? Abdullah Mason, that's not a big fight, so I don't see that. That's more of a high risk, low reward. Guys got to understand how boxing works, right? When you have like a contender that looks super dangerous and is really good but has nothing to offer, a lot of times you won't see the top guys fight them because it's going to be like, well, he brings nothing to the table. He doesn't bring money, nor does he bring anything legacy-wise, so it's no point of fighting him, right? That's just how boxing, how a lot of these guys work. Now, shout out to Shakur because he was actually willing to risk that with Floyd Schofield, but due to no fault of Shakur, Floyd Schofield pulled out of that fight. So, but Shakur seems to be the only one that's willing to just rock with that. Now, I'm not saying that Keyshawn is not gonna be, rock on that, but I because he is fighting De Los Santos, but De Los Santos hadn't fought in a few years. But it's just we gotta see. But a lot of times when these fighters, when contenders especially, when they're at a certain point, right, where Keyshawn was at just, last year, the contenders are willing to fight anybody. They want to fight anybody. They're calling out all dangerous fighters, all these names or whatnot. Rarely will you see a top contender against another top contender without a belt. It doesn't really happen like that. But then when they get to that status, when they get the belt, they're still willing to fight everybody until then they get into another status where it's like, kind of like Errol Spence. I can use Errol Spence as an example. And I know I'm kind of going off of subject, but I just really like to educate the fans. This is what my channel is about. But I can use Errol Spence and Keith Thurman as an example. When Keith Thurman was coming up, he was calling out all fighters. Sean Porter, he was calling out Floyd Mayweather, he was calling out Manny Pacquiao, he was calling out Amir Khan heavy. Then when Keith Thurman got to a certain point, He got that title. He still wanted to fight the big names. But then when he got to a certain point, Keith Thurman no longer was interested in fighting guys when it came to dangerous opponents like Errol Spence. Errol Spence was barking up Keith Thurman's tree for the longest. Keith Thurman never went to fight him. Terrence Crawford came to 147. Keith Thurman was like, "No, you need to fight Amir Khan," which I found funny because Keith Thurman, you were so eager to fight. In your words, welcome Danny Garcia to the welterweight division, but you didn't want to do so with Terrence Crawford. All right, whatever. Errol Spence came along, he was calling out Keith Thurman and stuff. He got to that certain point, then it was, the Terrence Crawford came. It was like, we got, let me handle my business over here. Jerron Ennis was coming up, hey, you a small pup. You got to get some more wins under your belts. So it happens. I've seen it so many times or whatever, right? So I highly doubt that Keyshawn is going to fight not Keyshawn, but Lamont Roach is going to fight Abdullah Mason, Raymond Maritala, whatever. Vasily Lomachenko, that's another one if he comes back. That fight spells a disaster for Lamont Roach, if I'm being honest. I don't think Lamont Roach could do anything with Lomachenko. Andy Cruz, Floyd Schofield, Frank Martin. That's a good one, Frank Martin. I like that. If he beats Tank, I would love to fight Lamont Roach next. If he beats Tank, there's only one fight to make in the lightweight division, and that's me, Lamont Roach. Real-ish. Keyshawn said to Fight Hype about wanting to fight Lamont Roach if he defeats Gervonta Davis in their potential rematch in June 21st. Roach isn't likely going to look in the direction of fighting Keyshawn Davis if he defeats Tank because there will be no money in that fight. Keyshawn is a popular, moreover, without a strict 10-pound hot rehydration clause to keep Keyshawn from rehydrating to 150 plus, it wouldn't be wise for Roach to fight him. The last thing Roach needs is to enter the ring against a giant T-Rex size Keyshawn standing across from him looking to tear him apart. He wouldn't want to fall into the same trap Denzi Baracek and Gustavo Limas by fighting junior middleweight sized Keyshawn. Now, here's the problem with that. When I read these articles, I got to debunk any type of stupidity that they bring up. Keyshawn didn't miss weight by 5 pounds when he fought Gustavos. Gustavos came in as a lightweight. As a junior welterweight. As a junior welterweight. Keyshawn came in at 135. So, let's talk about who's the bigger fighter. All right. Anyways, because these guys be trying to debunk, certain fighters. So I gotta kind of, make sure we stand on business with that. Anyways, I don't know how the Norfolk, Virginia native Davis makes weight for his fights. I mean, he's still making weight anyways. I ain't finna read all that. But it says, Calder Roach, for real, if you beat Tank, let's make the fight. Tank, if you win, let's fight. I don't care. Lamont, I would love to fight you. We can make a decent amount of bread. I think that makes the most sense, Keyshawn said. Letting Roach know that he wants to fight him if he's victorious against Tank. Davis, if you want to fight me, I want to fight you. Let's make it happen. Roach is not going to fight Keyshawn without Top Rank offering him a huge purse. That is true, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying, high risk, low reward. But anyways, they couldn't put the fight on pay-per-view because the fan wouldn't purchase it. It's not a pay-per-view fight. Not Navarrete. I don't think I'd fight Emmanuel Navarrete. It's pointless. It's a pointless fight. I wouldn't get excited in camp fight Navarrete. And I know I would stop Navarrete like Limas. He's too small, and he never looked good at 135, said Keyshawn. If I fight Raymond Maritala for sure, I'm not interested in fighting for his belt. We can fight, though he can keep the belt. No, Maritala does not hold a title. Because I was showing and say, what title does he have? Why would I pay a sanction fee for another trophy? I'm cool with the WBO. I mean, so it's an interesting fight. I doubt it happens. Actually, I would be shocked if it happens. As a matter of fact, I know I would be willing to bet it doesn't happen. But if it were to happen, I would pick Keyshawn. I think Keyshawn would really hurt. I don't know if he would stop. Lamont Roach got a chin, but I definitely would pick Keyshawn to pick apart Lamont Roach. All right, that's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. But what do I know?